Story 1. Emily's Escape from the Laundromat. I'm Emily, 26, and this happened in February 2024, just 3 weeks after I moved into my new apartment on the outskirts of Vale. I needed to wash a dress for my best friend's birthday dinner, but my mom, who usually let me use her machine, was away in the mountains. I remembered a 24-hour laundromat nearby, so I grabbed my clothes and headed there. It was my first time in a self-service laundromat, but it seemed simple enough. I started the wash and stepped outside to smoke a cigarette. The air was freezing, the streets empty, a thin fog creeping in despite it being only 4 p.m. As I exhaled, I noticed a kid, barely 18, I'd guess, on an electric scooter across the street, staring at me. His gaze was unnerving, too intense for a random passerby. I stared back, and he rode off, but not before giving me a strange, lingering look. I brushed it off. Maybe he was waiting for someone. I went back inside, scrolling Instagram for makeup ideas, when an older man came in to pick up his laundry. He nodded at me and left, disappearing into the fog. By 5 p.m., my clothes were done, and I was running late. As I stepped outside, I caught a glimpse of a figure behind me, pushing a scooter. It was the same kid, 99% sure of it. I was alone on that street, the fog thickening, and his presence felt wrong. I sped up, pulling out my phone to call my mom, but her phone was off, no signal in the mountains. He was getting closer. I ducked into a flower shop, explaining my situation to the owner, a kind woman who let me stay. I waited 10 minutes, hoping he'd leave, but I was too late for the party to linger. I stepped out thinking he was gone and hurried toward my building, just 200 meters away. Then a coin fell from my pocket. As I bent to pick it up, I saw him, still on the scooter, now with an older drunken man who stumbled and laughed in a language I couldn't place. Maybe Arabic. My heart raced. I walked faster, almost running, their footsteps echoing behind me. I reached my building's entrance, trembling from fear more than the cold. I didn't want them to know where I lived, but I had no choice. I needed to get inside. Just then, I heard a voice. "Do you live here? Need anything?" 2 police officers were questioning the pair. I nearly collapsed with relief. They asked for their IDs, but neither had any, so the officers took them to the station. One officer approached me, explaining that the flower shop owner had called them. She'd seen them loitering while the police were ticketing a car nearby. The next day, I drove to the flower shop to thank her, buying her a bouquet of roses. I still wonder why I didn't call the police myself. In the moment, fear clouded my judgment. They might have just wanted to scare me, or maybe rob me. Who knows? A month later, I walked alone again for the first time since that night, determined not to let fear control me. But I'll never forget the feeling of being watched, hunted, on that empty street. Story 2. Emily's Night Drive. I've always hated driving alone at night, especially on isolated roads with little traffic. But one night, after a party in Vale, I had to. My friends left separately, and I was on my own, exhausted, craving a shower and my bed. I played a pop playlist, singing softly to stay awake, when I noticed headlights in my rear-view mirror. Another car, nothing unusual. I kept driving, sticking to the speed limit since I've never been one to speed. After a few minutes, I realized the car wasn't passing me. It stayed at the same distance, matching my every move. I slowed down, hoping it would overtake, but it didn't. I sped up. It followed. My hands started sweating on the wheel, a gnawing dread settling in. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe the driver was nervous about passing on a narrow road at night, like I sometimes am. But the road grew twistier, with steep climbs and sharp descents. And those headlights never wavered. I turned off the music, unable to focus, and decided to pull into a dirt turnout to let them pass. I signaled, stopped, and watched as the car slowed too, stopping a few meters behind me. Then, without warning, its headlights went out. My heart dropped. I sat there, engine running, gripped by an urge to flee. I thought about getting out to ask if they needed help, but every instinct screamed no. If they wanted to pass, they could have. If they needed help, why not flash their lights or approach? Why turn off their headlights in the dead of night? I remembered horror movies where killers toy with their victims, and panic clawed at my chest. I flicked on my hazard lights for a few seconds, as if to say, "I'm fine, just stopping." No response. I couldn't see the driver, but I felt their gaze, heavy and unyielding. After 20 agonizing seconds, I floored the accelerator, tires skidding on the dirt as I swerved back onto the road. I thought they'd stay behind, but no. Their headlights snapped back on, and they followed, keeping that same eerie distance. I sped up, taking curves faster than I should have, my hands shaking. I reached for my phone to call someone, but it was in my bag on the passenger seat, and I couldn't grab it without risking a crash. I made a sharp turn onto a narrow side road, hoping to lose them, but they turned too. Tears stung my eyes as I drove deeper into the countryside, the road leading nowhere. I spotted a house with a faint light, thinking I could stop and ask for help, but it was gated, dark, and empty. No way to get in. I looped back to the main road, drenched in cold sweat, the car still behind me. In a desperate move, I slammed on the brakes, pulling the handbrake to spin my car sideways. If they wanted to hit me, let it be obvious. I was done running. They stopped too, their headlights glaring, but they didn't move. I hyperventilated, legs trembling, then sped off again, not knowing what else to do. I remembered a sharp hairpin turn from childhood trips with my dad, leading to a small parking lot near an old restaurant. I took the turn hard, nearly losing control, and hid in the weed-choked lot, ducking low in my seat. The car passed the turn. I thought I'd lost them. But then their headlights reappeared, slowing at the bend. They stopped, scanning the darkness, then went out again. I pictured the driver getting out, creeping closer. I bit my hand to stifle my sobs, trapped with a wall behind me and the road ahead blocked. After what felt like forever, maybe 10 minutes, the headlights came back on. The car made a slow U-turn and drove off, vanishing into the woods. I didn't trust it. I waited, engine off, until the silence felt safe. When I finally drove home, I crept along, jumping at every shadow, expecting them to reappear. I hit a curb, heard a loud thud from my tire, but didn't stop. I just wanted to be safe. Even in town, under the streetlights, I felt no relief. Who were they? Did they take my license plate? Are they waiting for me? I told a friend, but she didn't fully believe me. I couldn't tell my mom. She'd blame me for being out late. I thought about reporting it, but what would I say? A car followed me, and I was scared. I didn't even see the plate or model. To this day, I'm terrified to drive alone at night, always feeling those eyes on me. Story 3. Emily's encounter in the parking lot. It was a cold December day in Shadow Vale, and my parents had asked me to pick up my little sister, Lily, who'd been out with a friend. They had an engagement, so it was up to me. We agreed to meet at 5:30 p.m. in the parking lot of our old middle school. I left too early and arrived with 20 minutes to spare. The lot was huge, empty, lit only by dim streetlights and the fading daylight. I parked, locked the doors, and turned off the engine, planning to play some music to pass the time. Then I saw him, a man on a bench across the lot, dragging a shopping trolley. He looked old, his clothes tattered, shoes worn through, beard long and unkempt. At first I thought nothing of it, but then he started acting strange, glancing over his shoulder obsessively, as if something or someone was after him. My stomach knotted. I tried to distract myself by turning on the radio, but the feeling wouldn't leave. 10 minutes later, he stopped looking around, grabbed his trolley, and shuffled toward the exit. I let out a shaky breath, scolding myself for being so paranoid. He was probably just a homeless man, maybe on drugs or a bit unhinged. I checked my phone, 5 minutes until Lily arrived. I scanned the lot again, and my blood froze. In my rearview mirror, he was back, standing a few meters behind my car, staring directly at me. I wanted to drive away, but fear pinned me in place. He approached, his steps slow and deliberate, and knocked on the passenger window. I'd locked the doors, thank God, but I hesitated, then lowered the window just enough to hear him. 3 minutes until Lily arrived, the longest of my life. His face was a map of wrinkles, a deep scar on his right cheek, his eyes small and black as pitch. "You need to leave," he said, his voice low and raspy. I stammered, "I'm waiting for my sister. She'll be here soon." He smiled, revealing long, sharp canines that gleamed unnaturally in the dim light. "What a good girl," he said, then turned and walked away. Lily arrived moments later, and we sped off. It's been a while, but that memory still chills me. I've thought about it a lot. Those couldn't have been real fangs, right? Vampires aren't real. He was probably just a disturbed man with a twisted sense of humor. But in that moment, in that empty lot, I felt something ancient watching me, something that wasn't entirely human,